Good morning, Orlando. On Saturday, I went to Disney World's Magic Kingdom, and I learned two things. Firstly, I am too old for Disney World's Magic Kingdom. As a 29-year-old childless man, it is not designed for people like me. But the second and most important thing I learned at Disney World's Magic Kingdom was that the real magic happening this week in the state of Florida is here at BAFT. This is very much the magical kingdom of transaction banking. And joining me on stage, I don't have any Disney characters. I have much better than that. I have Alejandro from Swift, Alex from SMBC, Andreas is in our team from Commerzbank. We have Jason from BNY. We have Julio from Credit Agricole. We have Kathleen from ANZ, and we have Thuy Van Lee from Societe Generale. Throughout this speech, you are going to learn the future of banking. And before we go into the contents, I'd like to ask you one question. I'd like you to stand if you believe that you are part of the future of banking. A couple of people sitting down. Yeah. That's reassuring to know. You can take a seat. In this speech, we're going to cover 5 main areas. Why the future banker matters, the forces reshaping the banking industry, the next generation of banker, preparing for the transformation, and the technology and automation that will take us there. I'll now hand over to Alex, who will talk you through the first bit.
Thanks, Rob, for that wonderful introduction. So, before we talk about the future banker, we started off with a much simpler question. What's actually changing in banking today, and what does that mean for us? Well, to address that question, we surveyed banking professionals just like yourselves, and 64% of banking professionals ranked technology and automation as the #1 force that's reshaping the industry. And the shift, it isn't marginal. As a matter of fact, research suggests that nearly 40% of core skills, they're expected to change before the end of the decade. So think skills like adaptability, complex problem solving, even strategic thinking. All of these are becoming much more valued. And we're actually seeing this show up and reflect in hiring practices today. 84% of bankers ranked strategic thinking as their #1 hiring priorities. And at the same time, as we see technology embedded today in banking culture, data literacy is emerging as equally as foundational. Both Forbes and McKinsey, they argued that this skill is critical for modern day bankers. And guess what? Our survey, it actually validates that need. 59% of bankers identified data literacy as their #1 skill gap. So let's test this in the room. I want to ask the audience a few questions. Don't worry, I won't ask you to stand up again, but just by a quick show of hands, how many of you feel you and your organization is keeping pace with technology? Just quick show of hands. Okay, it seems like not that many, maybe less than 40%. I appreciate the honesty, thank you for that. What's actually harder in practice, understanding technology, or do you think getting people to actually adopt it? Can you please raise your hand for understanding? Okay, no one. And then can you please raise your hand for adoption? Okay, so it seems like we're pretty much aligned. And then for the third question, if you can please go to the Slido poll, there's a QR code on the screen. There's several options that you could choose from. But the question we want to ask the audience is, which of these skills do you find the largest gaps today? You could choose from data literacy and AI tools, strategic thinking, relationship management, and commercial acumen. Okay, please send the votes in. It seems like we're getting a majority in data literacy, 30% in strategic thinking. Okay. Okay, well that's perfect. So we actually, it seems like, so data literacy, it seems like it's still leading the charge. So it seems like we're aligned for the most part, we actually addressed these same questions in our survey, and we just want to summarize some of the main takeaways. So 48% of bankers, they said that their number one challenge is simply keeping pace with technology. As I mentioned before, data literacy, it was ranked number one in terms of the greatest skill gap. And it seems like that's pretty much aligned with the live audience today. Not shown on the slide, but interestingly, what came as a close second is strategic thinking. And remember, strategic thinking was ranked amongst the highest in terms of hiring priorities. Now, what that means is that the skills that we're prioritizing are actually some of the skills that we find the largest gaps in. And lastly, when we ask bankers what's actually holding back transformation, it was quite surprising. It wasn't funding constraints, it wasn't regulation. 82% said culture and mindset. So this is where it gets a little bit awkward. When we asked bankers whether or not leadership sponsorship was also holding back transformation, 0% of senior leaders found no issues. At the same time, 60% of everyone else, they did find issues. So what does that mean? That means that almost everyone else thinks that leadership has some sort of play into the role of transformation, except for leaders themselves. And the only reason why we bring up this gap is if we can help reconcile that difference, that perception gap, we not only improve transformation, but we can help redefine the future banker, not just for the future generation, but also for the existing workforce. So let me pass it over to Kathleen now, who will explore the future banker.
Thanks, Alex. So building on that, one of the key questions of our paper is, well, what does a future banker actually look like? And the honest answer is, and slight spoiler alert, there isn't just one. So based on our research, surveys, and interviews, we deliberately opted to move away from a single defined archetype of what a future banker looks like. And instead, we identified 3 key personas. Now, these aren't job titles, and they are certainly not an exhaustive list. They're simply a practical way of describing the capability mix that banks increasingly need moving forward into the future. And so we'd like to give you a little sneak peek today by introducing you to some of them. So first, we have Clara, the client problem solver. So Clara isn't defined by products, but rather her curiosity. She understands her client's business deeply, anticipates issues before they surface, and translates complexity into clear and actionable insights. As products become more and more standardized, digital and digitized, differentiation is going to shift away from what bankers sell currently to how well they actually understand a client's business. And that is what Clara's strength is. Next, please meet Theo, the translator. Theo sits between the business and tech teams. Now, he's not an engineer, but he's fluent enough to understand and connect what technology can do with what bankers and clients actually need it to do for them. This bilingual capability came up again and again in our research and is an essential skill for scaling products and innovation without losing clarity and control. And finally, we have Rita, the risk anchor. Rita ensures that speed, innovation, and automation are never going to outrun judgment, trust, and accountability. As banking becomes faster and more automated, Rita's role, making sound decisions under pressure and embedding risk principles into design, becomes more and more important, not less. Ultimately, though, what really matters here from an organizational perspective is balance. If you have too many Claras without any Theos, you're going to get great ideas that never scale. If you have too many Theos without any readers, you're going to get faster innovation, but greater risk. And too many readers without Claras, safety and security, but without any client relevance. What our research also surfaced is that the challenge for banks isn't necessarily identifying these personas, but it's building it into your organization at scale. Again and again, our interviewees pointed out this concept of organizational inertia. That is, legacy role definitions, incentives, and operating models that make it really hard to change how people actually work today. Now, we do not have time today to cover off into that in a lot of detail, but we do take a really deep dive into our paper, including providing examples of what leading banks are doing to actually overcome this notion in practice. Now, there is one more important member of the team that we do need to include, and that is Claude and our friend. Because we can't talk about Clara, Theo, and Rita without recognising Claude. Clara, Theo, and Rita understand that technology and AI are not things to be afraid of. Claude is very much a part of their team. And that is because the most successful future bankers are those who will work with technology and use it to amplify judgment, insight, and relationships, not replace them. And that distinction between substitution and amplification turns out to matter far more than what most technology conversations currently assume today.
Thank you. So we've established that technology is the #1 force. We asked it again, and even in the prior panel where during the next era of transaction banking, we asked the same question. Data usage and automation was actually the #1 response from the room. So in the next 2 minutes, I want to spend some time not really going into what is changing. Change has happened, and it's going to continue to evolve. But I want to touch on what are we doing about it, and are we getting it right? Now, this is a finding that should make us a little uncomfortable in the room. As you saw when Alex was presenting his slides, about 59% of professionals in our survey identified data literacy as a #1 skill gap. So what's the normal response from institutions? E-learning platforms, modules, self-paced digital learning. When we asked everyone what works for them, and if you can't read the slides, 91% put under top 3 that on-the-job learning and stretch assignments is their preferred way. About 68% said mentorship and coaching. But where did digital learning and self-paced learning rank? 2%. Just 2% ranked it as their preferred way of learning. I hope these insights have the room thinking about what are we doing in our institutions? How are we training our people for this change? And if the answer is nothing, that's not good. If the answer is we're doing just digital learning, that's still an issue. Digital learning can be great. There is room for it. But if that's all you're doing, you're investing in a solution that your own people are saying does not work for them. And at that point, you don't have a technology problem, then it becomes a leadership decision problem. We need to invest in technology fluency. That's a fact. So again, 59% of the workforce, if 59% of the workforce cannot adequately govern AI, just buying more tokens or getting the Opus 4.7 is not gonna fix any issues. It's not gonna get you ahead. It's just gonna concentrate risk. The banks that will get ahead are not necessarily the ones that, again, get more tokens or buy the latest technology. Everyone in this room has the same access to technology. The banks that will get ahead are the ones that invest equally in the people in training to govern and utilize this new technology. On the other hand, the banks that will fall behind or get caught off guard are not the ones that fail to buy the best technology. Again, that's available to all of us. The ones that will fall behind are the ones that didn't invest equally in the people. Thank you. Please download our paper. We're holding a webinar where we're going to go in more detail on June 9th, and we're going to open it for Q&A now.
I mean, I could take the second question. How do we land on these 3 personas? So it didn't really come to us. It was through our research, going through the survey data as well as our interviews that we conducted. We saw 3 common characteristics, which was client understanding, strong client understanding, the ability to adapt to technology, and a strong risk tolerance. So with that said, I mean, I think we're cutting it short on time, but like my colleague Alejandro said, please read our paper and please join our webinar on June 9th. Thank you.